Welcome to Hannity. Tonight, major developments in the 2016 race. Vice President Joe Biden announced earlier today that he will not be running for president, and Donald Trump continues to dominate the GOP field. Here with the latest, Campaign Carl Cameron. He joins us with all the details. Campaign Carl.
Hi, Sean. Well, there is just more evidence of Donald Trump's total dominance in the polls. And in the latest batch, particularly bad news for Jeb Bush. Check this out. When Republicans are asked who they expect to win the nomination, Trump destroys the field with 42%. Ben Carson and Jeb Bush are the closest, and they're only in the teens. Looking ahead to who Republicans think can actually win the general election, the top three all gain a point, and Rubio actually emerges with 11%. Now, when you get to the actual horse race, the ABC poll shows that Trump's at 32%. Carson's at 22%. Rubio's got 10%, and Bush is at 7%. All of this looks just great for Trump, but pollsters have begun digging deeper into voter attitudes, and there's a new Wall Street Journal poll that shows that instead of satisfied and optimistic that the GOP candidates will do a good job if and when they get into the White House, most Republicans are uncertain and pessimistic. Carson seems to have the most confidence. 42% say they're optimistic and satisfied that he'd do a good job. 50%, however, are uncertain and pessimistic. Rubio and Fiorina are second and third. Now, look at this. By a 2-to-1 margin, Republicans are uncertain and pessimistic about whether Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, and Donald Trump would make good presidents. Those numbers will eventually start to shift as soon as the actual nominee emerges next year, at which point GOP unity is going to be a critical priority. The last two GOP nominees, McCain and Romney, struggled to get the party together. This time, a huge uniting factor on the right is the likelihood that with Biden now out, it's going to be Clinton on the left. Sean.
All right, Carl Cameron, thank you. Here with us now with reaction, author of the brand new book, America the Strong, Conservative Ideas to Spark the Next Generation, and Washington Fellow at the Claremont Institute, our friend Bill Bennett. Good, long time no see. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
All right, let's start with Biden. So what? He's not in?
Agree. Never would have mattered much anyway.
At best, he would have been a backup when she falters.
She's the nominee, unless he gets really mad and gets interesting and endorses Bernie.
That could,
or Larry David.
Or Larry David,
yeah,
one or the other?
Right, one or the other.
All right, let's go to these polls. 5 polls have come out this week. Look at this latest ABC poll. Trump up by double digits in that poll. You look at, not even close who they expect to be the nominee, who will be the nominee. It's going to be Trump. You look at this phenomenon of the outsider, the insurgent candidate. There's a reason for this, and that is 60% of Republicans feel betrayed by Republicans. I'm a registered conservative. I'm one of them.
I understand. I hear folks every morning say that to me on my radio show. I feel a little bit betrayed as well, but we still have to keep our...
Why a little bit? I feel a lot betrayed.
Because of the Constitution, because of the limitations. People, I think, still do not appreciate what limitations you have.
And why did they promise they would defund Obamacare?
Well,
why did they promise they would stop executive amnesty?
They promised they would try to defund Obamacare.
They never said try. Well, they said they would.
We can parse it closely, but I don't think a lot of the leadership did. Look, I'm very frustrated, too. Main task is to get a Republican president and not to divide this party even further the way it's been divided lately.
Okay, so you okay with the Donald Trump candidacy?
No, I'm not okay at all.
Why not?
Because I look at a man in the totality of his acts and his record and the things he has said and stood for. And I think probably he's not very principled in terms of his convictions anyway, except he, is a businessman who does things his way, his own idiosyncratic way. I do understand the appeal. People are angry, mad, and he seems big enough to kind of encompass that anger.
I think
he's the big guy.
I see a guy that wanted to keep his workers working in New York, where Democrats outnumber Republicans, 8-1.
Right.
A guy that played the game because, you know what, that's the system. He didn't set it up. And I've asked him specifically on the economy. I've asked him on health care. I've asked him on immigration. I've asked him on Planned Parenthood.
Right. No more single payer for him, right?
No, he said to me...
And no more impeachment of George W. Bush.
He said to me...
No more supporting Pelosi and Reid for him.
Listen, you could say all of these things, but
true.
He said to me he supports health care savings accounts. Okay. He'll control the border. Immigration's a huge issue right now. I thought his economic plan was really good. Paul Ryan even said it was good.
Well, now, that's interesting, isn't it, that we cite Paul Ryan. Here's Paul Ryan, who's being skewered by a lot of our friends, a lot of people who are my friends in the House. Paul Ryan for deviating on a couple of points. The trade deal, people don't like that. His view on immigration. Here's Trump with a record, longer than your arm. wrong on all these things, getting all this support. That's what makes me a little angry and makes me think there's a lot of irrationality. Look, if Trump's a nominee, Sean, I will support him because I won't support Hillary.
Right.
But I think there's so much uncertainty, Sean.
I was interviewed by USA Today.
Yeah.
I said, and you know Paul Ryan, I know Paul Ryan. He's the nicest guy you'll ever meet. But I said, I don't think this is the job for him. And I'll tell you why. Because the next speaker immediately is going to face a debt ceiling battle, a CR battle. The next immediately conservatives are going to want to know: Are you going to be willing to stand firm on defunding Obamacare or aspects of it, or use reconciliation? Are you going to defund Planned Parenthood? Are you going to stop executive amnesty? What are you going to do on the Iranian deal? And I'm not so sure by December, if Paul takes that job, he's not viewed by the 60% as John Boehner.
As one of his closest friends and as someone who he says was a mentor, that's me, I'm not sure I want him to take the job. I think he's in the perfect job for him now, chairman of Ways and Means. That's what he lives for.
He's a policy wonk.
That's what he does. However, isn't it interesting that everybody turned to Ryan? Conservatives turned to Ryan, the other caucuses turned to Ryan. Yeah, now I know they're criticizing him. But why was he the one guy? Because they know he is a true conservative.
Listen, I think it's like
conviction who can lead.
Tell me if you think this is a bad plan for whoever becomes speaker. I think, number one, they've got to hit the reset button and say, this is a new regime.
Yes,
Don't
sir.
hold me responsible for what the old regime did.
Right.
The second thing, Republicans, because they don't trust these guys, I think they need to make promises to America, contract with America, call it what you will, put it on paper, get the entire conference to sign it, and say, if you elect us, we will do these things, and then do them. And stop making...
Fine. Don't, as the song says, don't make promises you can't keep. And Newt Gingrich's contract with America had a lot of things in it. Some of them he were able to keep, some of them they were not. He had a pretty good record. But there are limitations to what you can do until you get that White House. And that's got to be said, too. Look, the minute Paul gets that job, if he takes it, he's going to be criticized by the conservatives.
You mentioned the Constitution.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The Constitution gives the power of the purse to Congress.
Yeah, sure. Let's get to the end game here. Power of the purse, they can shut down the government.
Wait a minute. Newt Gingrich shut it down twice.
Right.
Newt Gingrich was the last speaker to leave a balanced budget and a surplus for this country, got Bill Clinton to sign welfare reform.
I agree.
And he laid out a foundation of intellectual ideas to bring Republicans to power for the first time in 40 years.
He was a great speaker and a great leader.
Consequential.
And I think Ryan could be the same. But it wasn't by shutting down the government that he achieved all this.
Shut it down twice.
I know he did. But when
Boehner and McConnell say they won't do it, they surrender.
I don't think you should say it ahead of time. I don't think you should ever preemptively say it.
And maybe you have to be willing to pass a bill and let Obama shut it down.
Right. Well, pass a bill, get it through the House, get it through the Senate. The House has done a pretty good job getting a lot of bills through.
And if the Senate doesn't take it up, meet them in conference or sit on your hands and let them do what they've got to do. Keep your promises.
Let who do what they want to do?
Let the Senate do what they're going to do and let Obama veto the bill and then sit on your hands.
A lot of these things up, as we know they have. The Democrats have enough votes to bottle these things up.
Okay, what about reconciliation? Because the Democrats used it.
You can only do so many things through reconciliation. You can't do all these.
Okay, true.
All these matters you're talking about.
What about the nuclear option that Harry Reid used?
No, I don't think we want to do that. I think we want to respect that idea. Excuse me. In that way of doing business.
So even if it means allowing a president to push unconstitutional, illegal executive amnesty, that's not worth taking a stand on?
I think Andy McCarthy's right. The way to do this is impeachment. Now,
impeachment?
Yeah, it'll never happen. It'll never happen. But that's the remedy. That's the remedy that the Constitution
You don't think the power of the purse is the remedy? That's a constitutional provision?
Power of the purse is a remedy when you can use it in a rational way that won't end up biting you in the back.
I love this idea.
Okay.
And what I would like to see the next speaker do is what you're saying here. Conservative ideas, I want them on paper. And you write America the Strong.
Right.
If we don't get our act together soon, we're losing the country.
Right.
And it's got to be built not on anti-Obama, anti-Hillary, but ideas that will get Americans back to work, out of poverty, off of food stamps. Does this book offer the roadmap?
This book offers all those ideas. But I want to say again, nobody better embodies these ideas than Paul Ryan. The fact that he's being held to a ridiculous standard, I think, is damaging. I hear Reagan invoked. I know Reagan better than all the people who are invoking Reagan. I sat with him. I was in his cabinet. I was a friend of his. Reagan will be thrown out by this caucus today.
That's nonsense.
Yes,
I don't believe that. No, he
tax
wouldn't.
increases, big bills on abortion.
He reduced the top rates from 70 to 28%.
Come on, the TEFRA bills. I'm sure he did that
over
too.
immigration, I will tell you right now.
Immigration, Simpson
1986,
Mazzoli, right.
but Reagan also said it was the biggest mistake of his presidency.
Well, okay, good, fine. So if you say you make a mistake, then
I think Paul Ryan needs to say,
people need to
secure
look
the
at
borders
Reagan
first.
realistically, and this is the
How's
next
this
Reagan.
idea?
I think he's the next Reagan.
How's this as an idea? Secure the borders first, no path to citizenship.
Sounds like Paul Ryan.
Okay.
Secure the border first. Absolutely.
Sounds like Bill Bennett endorsing
All right.
somebody.
No, well, listen. I think he's the best of his generation. I know him well, and I knew Reagan well, and I think he's the right heir. He's the heir to Kemp and Reagan, and that's why I love the guy.
I love your books. Good to see you.
Thank you.
sir.
But that's a good book, and it's a good book if you need
At this time.
If a young person needs to defend himself against liberals
Uh,
or against
send it to
people
every
who say
college
they're
kid.
conservatives. No, you're a conservative.
All right.
For
Come,
sure.
what does that mean?
I'm just
what is that
kidding.
cheap shot at
No,
this?
you're coming after me. I'm
I'm
just a gentle.
I want strength. I
do
want
too.
the country to be saved. We're in trouble.
Listen,
we're
look,
losing the country.
I've been called wishy-washy by the guys in in some of the right-wing media.
All right.
They don't remember. They don't remember
Good to
the
see you, Bill
fights.
Bennett.
It's good to be in the fight.
I want to be in the fight.
I know you are.
I am every night.
Thank you.